Hi, good morning, everyone. I know there was a panel yesterday that spoke about cross-screen, and I think that at the end of the panel begged the question, with all these, these myriads of data points about different devices and usage, who is going to be able to link and aggregate these data points safely? So let's find out. And with Adbrain, our mission is to solve the cross-device problem. By cross-device problem, I mean the inability that everybody, brands, agencies, publishers, technology vendors, the inability to have a unified view of their audience as they move across different screens and across different devices. My goal today is to talk about some basic notions of the cross-device linkages and the device graph, so that hopefully it will help equip you when you're evaluating a vendor for your own needs. And also to show you that cross-device is already more than just a buzzword, and the fact that we've been doing very interesting things to help some clients now, and hopefully it'll give you some ideas, right, on what is possible today. Is this working? Clicker? Good. All right, so I think everybody's familiar with this, so I will not dwell on it, right? But people move seamlessly across devices throughout the day. So it's very possible that you might be reading the news on your cell phone when you're having breakfast. Then it's likely that you might have an office job, and you might be stuck in front of a desktop or a laptop for the majority of the day. And then maybe you'd be playing around or looking at your tablet in the evening, maybe while you're watching TV. And this is not just an experience that we are familiar with. 90% of people use multiple screens across the day to accomplish a single task. So that's virtually everybody. This is, by the way, Google data for the UK and the US. And 3 devices are owned on average by each consumer, right? So the fragmentation problem is prominent and is here. I thought I'd include a video stat. It seemed appropriate. This is an interesting one. So 53% of people prefer to stream TV content than to watch it live. And this is like a combination of Deloitte and Uyala data. The same number, 53%, very conveniently, is that broadcasters are seeing 53% of their VOD content being played on mobile, right? So it's just saying that people are increasingly watching premium video content, long-form content even, on their devices. You will notice that throughout my presentation, I will refer to mainly desktop, mobile, and tablet as what's out in the technology right now. Including other devices such as connected TVs and all that is entirely possible. It's down to demand, really. But I would argue that solving the challenge of the digital devices that are most prominent is already pretty relevant for this audience. And TV will probably come, I guess, next year. And very briefly, right, so what you have right now is a fragmented view, and what it means for a media business, whether on the sell side or the buy side, is it could lead to poor campaign performance or missed opportunities to engage, right? When you want to reach someone, but you don't know that same person that you want to reach on desktop also has this certain mobile device, for example. And also losing sight of your audience, right? Like, I mean, essentially, the reporting and insights that we have today are based on a fragmented view, and they're essentially wrong. They're the best that we have, but they're essentially wrong when you don't know which ones are the same users and consumers across multiple devices. Cross-device technology simply solves those same problems, right? In the interest of time, I'm not going to dwell on this too much. But how it works, right? How does technology enable you to have a unified view of consumers across all devices? So first of all, what is a device graph? You might have heard the jargon being thrown around. A device graph is essentially a massive database containing a lot of IDs for single devices, right? It could have cookie IDs for desktop web and mobile web environment, and device IDs such as IDFAs and Android IDs for mobile app and tablet app environments. So it's a massive database of IDs that are clustered together according to which IDs belong to the same user. Simple. How a device graph is built is the interesting part. So there's really only 2 ways of matching different users across devices. One way is called deterministic. It means that you know for sure that you're looking at the same user across multiple devices. it's typically done because you have a login or some sort of an email address, right? Some sort of personally identifiable information. Deterministic sounds really good, and it is, right? It's by definition very accurate. It's also inherently limited in scale and scope. I think there are a lot of publishers in the room that probably concur with me that if they had to rely solely on their login data, they can never reach the scale to have a universal view of all the audience in this country, or let alone the globe. Essentially, unless you're a Facebook or a Google, chances are you're not going to be able to scale to the entire universe with deterministic data. The other issue with it that doesn't make it a viable solution for all of your needs is the fact that it's limited in where you can use the data and how you can leverage it. It typically can only be leveraged within the confines of a walled garden, or simply you don't get enough transparency, right? You put data in and you get the learnings, but you cannot then export those learnings and use them outside the walled garden, right? For all the good reasons. I mean, if I were a walled garden, I would probably do the same. But marketers, publishers, tech vendors need an alternative, or at least a complementary solution. And the only alternative to deterministic method has to be a probabilistic method. So you don't know for sure that 2 or more devices belong to the same individual, but through some very clever technology, you can match together devices that are very likely to belong to the same individual. And a probabilistic approach really needs at least to have a seed deterministic data to validate the accuracy, right? Because obviously, like, I'll take you to the methodology right now. Hopefully it sounds all good, but that's in principle, right? How do you know that it works? And I'm going to take you through that right now. So very simply, right? And this is kind of like a simplified version. So all the points there are IDs, right? You could see cookie IDs and device ID popping up all the time in the bid stream, in the campaigns you run, in your ad server, whatever. And basically, you can always find information about the time, right? When you saw that ID pop up, and an indication of space. It could be an IP address, it could be lat long. There's several techniques. But essentially, if you plot all the data points that you see, and then you kind of trace the movement in space and time of a device, what you will see is that some devices share several locations and times over a long period of time, right? You cannot do it through a naive observation of just one moment. Otherwise, all of the devices in this room that are linked to the Wi-Fi from Video Ad News, they're going to be linked to the same person, right? The point is that you have to have enough observations to then see that we'll all go our separate ways at some point, and then increasingly the algorithm will match our portable devices with our home devices, perhaps. And that's it. And that's how you know you have a match over time. So our solution for cross-device identity basically is just the device graph, it's just the matches. But it's not just like having the matches, what you do with them. So there's a lot of applications. I'm pretty sure you guys will get the slides so you can read them afterwards, but I'm not going to dwell into all of them. I'm going to give you some examples a bit later on. But they're broadly classed into 2 clusters, right? You can either do some clever targeting, because now you know that you have information about the multiple devices that belong to the same user, and you know how to leverage, for example, propensity to research on one device and then perform a conversion or a desirable action on another device. Or analytics, right? Analytics means, OK, I didn't really know. The reporting I'm getting is fundamentally flawed in that I don't know if my frequency was understated because I'm actually spamming people on multiple devices without knowing, et cetera, right? So these are the 2 main camps. But before I go more deeper in the applications, we need to talk about accuracy. Something comes up, obviously, you're like, OK, fine. So you don't have a login, so you don't know for sure how accurate your matches are. So yeah, how do you do it, right? How do you know you're doing a good job? So this slide is a big risk. It's a bit heavy, right? So I want you guys to pay attention so I don't lose you. Let's see how this works out, right? So far so good. This is an example of a device graph. It's a tiny one. There's like 10 matches there. Yeah? It's actually 10 kind of permutation of devices. So what you will have is like devices matched together, and then you would predict, is it a match or is it not a match? So the yes means I believe they're matched. The no means I believe they belong to different individuals, right? And here you see around 2 yeses and 8 nos, by the way. Then what you do, you use a deterministic truth set, what you know to be true from a third-party vendor, and you're like, OK, I know that A and B belong to the same user in this example, C belongs to another user, D belongs to another user. Great. And then you evaluate how well did I do. So the green ticks are the correct matches, and the red crosses are the wrong ones, right? So accuracy as a metric has a specific statistical meaning. In statistics, it's defined. You can find the definition on Wikipedia, right? The issue is that accuracy will give you credit for both when you predicted that two devices belong to the same user and when you correctly predicted that they don't. So your accuracy score here is 8 out of 10, 80%. The problem is that accuracy is not the right metric for this purpose because most devices in the world do not belong to the same users. And I have to say this because there's been a lot of press around the accuracy of cross-device solutions. And that's all good, and it's probably well-defined. It's just not the right metric to look at, right? And I'm going to quickly define two other metrics that are actually the relevant ones, very quickly. So there is a metric called recall. This metric says, of all the matches that exist, how many did you predict correctly? So you see what I did, right? I forgot all the ones that don't exist, and my recall is 50%. There's another, and recall is good. It implies scale. It's good for the targeting applications. That's why I mentioned it before. If you want to do cross-device retargeting, you want a high recall, and it's harder to obtain than accuracy. There is another metric that is called precision. Of the matches you predicted, how many of your predictions were correct? So I'm just going to take the ones I predicted as matches, and again, I get a 50% score. This is just to give you a practical example of how the real metrics are much harder to obtain, yeah? So these are questions that you want to ask. I don't know, methodology and all that. So hopefully I didn't lose anyone or too many people. Sorry about the heavy slide. I'm done with this kind of like mathematical mumbo-jumbo. All right, so we talked about what a device graph is, the ways to obtain a device graph, how do you validate that your device graph is accurate. So what can you do with it? Once you have a graph that you're happy with, that is accurate enough, what can you do? I'll give you just a few examples. We identified around 10 or 12 common applications, but these are some that hopefully will resonate. This is a targeting application, cross-device retargeting. We find this to be very relevant for finance, retail, travel clients. They tend to be very results-driven or DR-driven. The thesis is normally that users might research on their mobile phones and be swayed by the advertising or the website, but then they would convert on desktop. And with a time lag, maybe they need to consult their spouse before they book the holiday, right? Or maybe they want to be comfortable with their big screen before buying that large ticket item. So what you can do is that you can prospect your users on mobile and the users who interacted with your campaign or your website or your app, and then retarget those users when they're on desktop to drive additional conversions. And this should perform better than your prospecting on desktop. Otherwise, you're doing it wrong. Another targeting example is simple audience amplification, right? You might have a seed audience that you want to do something with, and typically most people who have first-party data, they have first-party data that is based on the desktop cookie for legacy reasons, right? So what you can do overnight, you can leverage a device graph to then get the IDs for the same users when they're on their mobile web, mobile app, tablet web, tablet app. Other devices, I have a work computer and a home computer. Other browsers, if you use multiple browsers on one device, you still have two IDs. And this amplifies the size of your highest performing audience. So right now, you're frustrated because you can only scale your high-performing retargeting segments so much, you can scale them further. And it should work better than prospecting. On the analytics front, right now, if a client, and this I think is very relevant to brand and video, right? If you care about reach and frequency, right now, if you reach me once on my home computer, once on my tablet, and once on my phone, your reporting will tell you that you reached 3 individuals once. In reality, you reached 1 individual 3 times, which is a completely different picture of reality. You simply don't know what's going on, right? And in fact, this is not just a very nice example. Comscore predicted at the end of last year that reporting based on the cookie due to fragmentation is likely to overstate reach and understate frequency by a factor of 3.5x. It means that if your report is telling you that you reach 10 million individuals, you actually reach 3 million, and you're probably spamming them. Finally, your picture of, if you do a conversion campaign, and by the way, this can be applied to anything, video completes, it can be applied to CTR, it can be applied to all engagement metrics, anything that you can measure at a campaign level, right? Your picture is probably like this. So you have a total of 100 of these actions. Time's up, but I'm almost done. You have 100 of these actions, right? But they'll be siloed, right? You'd have 75 of your actions on desktop, 15 on tablet, and 10 on mobile. The reality is more complex than that. The reality is an interplay of devices. So the originating device for the impression or the interaction, and then the converting device. And what you will find is, A, you better understand that relationship, and you can use that understanding to drive further optimization, right? So if you know that people that engage with your mobile app are more likely to convert on desktop this month, just organically, next month you're going to have a bigger mobile app prospecting campaign, so you can drive more of those desktop conversions. We've been doing something like this. It's very cool. Also, you'll discover some what we call hidden conversions, which is like sometimes, and we've seen this before, for a considered purchase, you might have someone doing the research on mobile and then being sold. All they do, they go on their browser, they type the URL of the advertiser, and they convert. That's an organic conversion, unattributed conversion. It's good for the media agency probably because they get to claim credit, but it's also good for the brand because they get to know where it came from and they can optimize for it. All right. Yeah, I guess on the pitch side of things, this is a case study just to show that this stuff works. Very briefly, because I'm out of time. We were able to show by running what you want to do when you run, for example, cross-device retargeting. So you take mobile users and you retarget them on desktop. You want to run alongside like a desktop prospecting campaign, right? This is an easy way to test accuracy because basically what you're doing is you're putting together two campaigns running at the same time with the same targeting, with the same budget, just targeting a specific audience versus normal prospecting. If those two perform equally, it means that your device graph is not accurate because you're basically just targeting people at random in both. But if the cross-device retargeting performs a lot better, you don't need to do any more difficult tasks to actually measure accuracy of your vendor. Does that make sense? So this probably gets sent to you. I don't want to overstay my welcome here. I'd rather tell you about things to consider when choosing your cross-device solution, yeah? Remember that privacy has to be at the center of all of this. You might have all heard the news about safe harbor. Basically, the Western world is becoming increasingly concerned with privacy, right? And when the proverbial S-storm hits, you don't want to be caught in the middle of it. So that's very important. Scale obviously is important, right? Does this thing scale? Can I have a view of the majority of the population in the countries that I'm looking at? It's also very important for your data to be portable. Otherwise, you're in a walled garden situation where you can only use the data with a specific vendor. You want the device graph and the learnings from the device graph to be able to use with all your favorite DSPs, DMPs, ad server, what have you. Transparency, obviously. Everybody loves transparency. Accuracy, quotes, in terms of precision and recall. And data ownership, right? The walled gardens do, which again is fine. They're furthering their own cause by using the campaign data to actually build their own asset and their own learnings, which is fine. I understand perfectly why they do that. But be mindful that your data, your audience data across devices could be used to benefit someone else. And you don't want that. So yeah, hopefully I managed to explain what device graph is, give you some tools to do your own thinking and your own evaluation, and make you understand that it's here, it's present, it matters, and hopefully will give you a better view of your audience. And you can download our cross-device white paper if you want to read more about it. So thank you very much.